So, where is the plane?
If you want exactly, it's 29.128 degrees south, 99.934 degrees east.
Richard Godfrey has pinpointed MH370's exact location, the plane that vanished with 239 souls 11 years ago. Now a new footage has surfaced showing what really happened in those final moments, and it contradicts everything. How did it disappear without a trace? Why is this only emerging now? I've got the full story. Let's get into it. The disappearance that haunted the world. March 8, 2014, a date that would become synonymous with one of aviation's most baffling mysteries. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 departed Kuala Lumpur International Airport at precisely 00:41 Malaysia time, carrying 239 souls aboard a Boeing 777-200ER, 227 passengers and 12 crew members from 14 different nations. The destination, Beijing. But this routine red-eye flight would never arrive at its destination. Instead, it would vanish into the night sky, leaving behind nothing but questions, theories, and a decade-long search that would span millions of square kilometers of ocean.
The beach never felt the same for that first year. To think they could be out there somewhere. Just constantly reminded, you look up in the sky and there's an airplane up in the sky and you just instantly question, how does something like that disappear, you know? 4 years on, it's just crazy to think that we're still in this position where we don't know where MH370 is, where our loved ones are.
The timeline of that fateful night has been pieced together through fragments of data, like assembling a puzzle with most of its pieces missing. At 1:07 Malaysia time, the Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System, ACARS, sent its final data transmission. The system that should have continued sending regular updates went silent shortly after. Then, at 1:19, came the last voice contact anyone would ever have with Flight 370. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah's voice came through clearly, acknowledging the handover to Vietnamese air traffic control with a phrase that would echo through aviation history. Good night, Malaysian 370.
We're 55 days in and we now have new, clean versions of the air traffic control tapes, which were first played for the families on Monday, but the tapes were officially released to everyone today. So you're about to hear the final communication between controllers and Flight 370. Now, when you hear them say flight level 350, they're referring to an altitude of 35,000 feet, which was their assigned altitude.
But something was already catastrophically wrong. Just 2 minutes after that final transmission, at 01:21, the plane's transponder was disabled near waypoint Aigari in the Gulf of Thailand. The aircraft that had been a bright blip on secondary radar screens simply vanished from civilian air traffic control. For the outside world, MH370 had ceased to exist. But Malaysian military radar told a different, more disturbing story, one that would only emerge days later, causing international outrage and confusion. The military radar painted a picture of deliberate action. The aircraft hadn't crashed or suffered a catastrophic failure. Instead, it had turned westward over the Malay Peninsula, then southwest over the Andaman Sea, flying at fluctuating altitudes between 29,500 and 35,700 feet. The last primary radar detection came at 2:22 Malaysia time, showing the aircraft approximately 200 nautical miles northwest of Penang Island, and then nothing, or so it seemed. What nobody knew at the time was that the plane's satellite data unit had rebooted at 2:25, sending what would become known as the first handshake or ping to an Inmarsat satellite orbiting high above the Indian Ocean. These automated satellite pings would continue at regular intervals, creating a trail of electronic breadcrumbs that pointed toward an unfathomable conclusion. MH370 had continued flying for nearly 7 more hours, heading south into one of the most remote regions on Earth, the southern Indian Ocean.
Why do you think it's so important to find out what happened?
The world needs to know what happened to MH370. How does a Boeing 777 disappear? And could this happen again? We need to find our loved ones. Like, we're in so much pain. My sister's family. It doesn't get any easier.
The initial search efforts were hampered by confusion and misdirection. For days, search teams scoured the South China Sea, believing this was where the plane had gone down based on its planned route. But this was all wrong. The military radar data showing the westward turn wasn't shared immediately, leading to precious time and resources being wasted in the wrong ocean. When the truth finally emerged, the search shifted to the Indian Ocean, but by then, any surface debris had likely sunk or dispersed over thousands of square kilometers. The official investigation would eventually focus on a curved line in the southern Indian Ocean called the 7th Arc, derived from those Inmarsat satellite pings. This arc represented possible locations where the aircraft could have been when it sent its final automated signal at 08:19 Malaysia time. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau led an unprecedented underwater search covering over 120,000 square kilometers of seabed at depths reaching 7 kilometers. The cost exceeded $155 million, making it the most expensive search in aviation history. Yet, when it was suspended in January 2017, they had found nothing but seafloor. Zero wreckage, zero black boxes, zero answers. But debris began washing ashore, carried by the Indian Ocean's powerful currents. In July 2015, a flaperon, a component from the wing, was discovered on Réunion Island, east of Madagascar. Serial numbers confirmed it came from MH370. Over the following years, more than 40 pieces of debris would be found scattered across the western Indian Ocean, in Mozambique, South Africa, Madagascar, Mauritius, and Tanzania. Each piece was a haunting reminder that the aircraft had indeed met its end in the ocean, violently breaking apart on impact. But these fragments only deepened the mystery. Where exactly had the plane crashed? And more troublingly, why?
People don't go on a holiday and not come back because they've disappeared. It's not fair. This is supposed to be their prime time of life. They were young. They're not here to enjoy family time.
What sort of milestones have you experienced in the past 4 years that I'd imagine you would have loved to have shared with your parents?
So it's taken us all a long time to somewhat feel normal again and find that happy place in life. My little sister got married last weekend actually, which was just beautiful, but also just that sad reminder that Mum and Dad aren't here to share those special moments with us.
The official 2018 Malaysian investigation report concluded with frustrating ambiguity. The evidence pointed to manual diversion of the aircraft, but they couldn't determine who was responsible or why. Every theory had holes. Pilot suicide? Captain Zahari was experienced and well-liked, with no apparent motive. Hijacking? No credible terror groups claimed responsibility, and the 2 passengers traveling on stolen passports were Iranian refugees, not terrorists. Mechanical failure? Then why the deliberate turns and the disabled communication system? Cyber attack? Possible, but unprecedented. For the families of the 239 people aboard, passengers from China, Malaysia, Indonesia, Australia, India, France, and beyond, the lack of closure was unbearable. They were left in a horrifying limbo, unable to properly grieve or find peace. Children grew up without parents. Parents aged without their children. And as the years passed, something remarkable happened. While the world seemed ready to move on, one man refused to let the mystery die. A retired British engineer named Richard Godfrey was about to propose a solution that would reignite the search and divide the aviation community. The question was, had he actually found what everyone else had missed, or was this just another dead end in aviation's most perplexing cold case? The controversial investigator. Enter Richard Godfrey. Born in August 1950 in London, he would become one of the most divisive figures in the MH370 investigation. Depending on who you ask, he's either a brilliant independent researcher on the verge of solving aviation's greatest mystery, or a well-meaning amateur whose unverified credentials and controversial methods have led the search astray. The truth, as is often the case, is somewhere in the murky middle. Godfrey's involvement in the MH370 case began shortly after the plane's disappearance. He became a founding member of the MH370 Independent Group, a collective of experts, enthusiasts, and analysts who volunteered their time to examine the technical data surrounding the flight. This group included aeronautical engineers, pilots, physicists, and data analysts from around the world, united by a single goal: finding the truth about what happened to Flight 370. But here's where the story gets complicated, and where we need to separate fact from fiction. In media appearances and documentaries, Godfrey has been described as a retired aerospace engineer with impressive impressive credentials. He's claimed experience working with NASA, Boeing, Airbus, and the European Space Agency. According to his own accounts, he led the integration of ESA's Space Lab with NASA's Space Shuttle and even designed a shuttle simulator. These are extraordinary claims that would certainly establish him as a qualified expert in aerospace matters. However, independent investigations into his background have revealed a more complicated picture. Public resumes from platforms like Xing.com and German professional records paint a different career trajectory. Godfrey's verified early career includes a role as project manager at Marconi Avionics Systems from 1972 to 1976, working on avionics systems for aircraft like the Boeing 747 and Tornado. This is legitimate aviation work involving autopilots and landing systems. But after 1976, the trail leads away from aerospace and into information technology. Records show roles in IT strategy, software development, and banking technology, including positions at Dresdner Bank and other financial institutions lasting through 2013. A former colleague, Frank Schwab, confirmed Godfrey's banking tech focus, but offered no details about aerospace involvement. Most tellingly, the European Space Agency confirmed he never worked directly for them, though they couldn't rule out subcontracting arrangements. Even more curious, resume versions provided to media after 2014 added aerospace details that were absent from earlier versions posted online. It's unclear whether these represent legitimate work that Godfrey simply hadn't mentioned before, or whether his credentials were being inflated to support his MH370 theories. This credential controversy matters because it goes to the heart of credibility. When the Australian Transport Safety Bureau acknowledged Godfrey as a credible expert in 2022, reviewing seabed data based on his predictions, they were lending official weight to his theories. But critics argue this endorsement was made without proper verification of his qualifications. As one analysis noted, ATSB's endorsement was questioned for lacking credential checks. Yet despite these controversies, Godfrey has produced an impressive body of work. He's published 59 papers on MH370, analyzing flight paths, debris patterns, and satellite data. He maintains regular contact with victims' families and speaks at remembrance events. His website, MH370search.com, presents detailed technical analyses that, regardless of their ultimate accuracy, demonstrate serious engagement with the data. So, what exactly is Godfrey's theory? This is where things get truly fascinating and deeply controversial.
Where is the plane?
If you want exactly, it's 29.128 degrees south, 99.934 degrees east.
So how did you come to this conclusion that this is the precise location where the plane is?
There are millions of radio amateurs around the world, and they're broadcasting all of the time. They send signals, and we can use those signals like a radar system to track this aircraft.
Godfrey's flagship theory revolves around something called WSPR, Weak Signal Propagation Reporter. This is a protocol used by amateur radio enthusiasts worldwide to test signal propagation. Thousands of operators constantly transmit low-power signals that are logged by receivers across the globe, creating a dense web of radio waves crisscrossing the planet. Godfrey's revolutionary-sounding idea is that when MH370 flew through these radio signals, it would have created detectable disturbances like a boat creating ripples on a pond. He claims to have analyzed over 200 billion lines of WSPR data and identified 130 specific anomalies that, when plotted, form a flight path. This path shows the aircraft departing from its last known radar position over the Andaman Sea, curving southwest, then heading south into the Indian Ocean. The proposed crash site, approximately 29.128 degrees south, 99.934 degrees east, about 2,500 kilometers west of Perth, Australia, in a deep ocean trench that was never properly searched.
She has been flying with Malaysia Airlines for the past 18 years. She's a lovely lady, a lovely wife. A very caring mum for my two kids.
To support this theory, Godfrey points to several pieces of corroborating evidence. The WSPR anomalies align with Inmarsat satellite pings within 4 minutes, and there were no other aircraft in the vicinity at those times. Drift analysis from the Geomar Helmholtz Center suggests debris could have originated from within 100 kilometers of his proposed site. Most impressively, a test flight conducted in November 2024 using a Boeing 777 along the proposed route reportedly produced real-time WSPR disturbances, seemingly validating the concept. The University of Liverpool applied Bayesian statistics to Godfrey's data and estimated a 74% probability that the aircraft is in his proposed location. These are impressive numbers that would seem to support his theory, and indeed, his work has had real-world impact. In early 2025, Malaysia approved a new no-find, no-fee underwater search by Ocean Infinity, the same company that conducted the 2018 search. This time, they would target a 15,000 square kilometer area around Godfrey's coordinates. But the scientific community's response has been far from universally positive. Radio propagation experts have raised serious concerns about using WSPR data for aircraft tracking. The fundamental issue is that WSPR signals are affected by ionospheric variability, solar interference, and countless other factors that have nothing to do with aircraft. The ionosphere, the layer of Earth's atmosphere where these signals bounce, is constantly changing due to solar activity, time of day, season, and weather. Untangling an aircraft's effect from this noise, critics argue, is like trying to identify a single raindrop's impact on ocean waves during a storm.
She's the glue that holds things together, my sister. It's a roller coaster ride. It's difficult for the family members. We are hoping there will be survivors. If it indeed ended somewhere in the Indian Ocean, we hope that there will be survivors. We hope Suhaili is among the survivors. Yes, that's the only thing that we can do. We hope that there is a light at the end of this tunnel.
I definitely miss him. He is a very committed professional pilot. If something had happened to this flight, I would think, and in fact I would believe, that he would have made sure of the safety and welfare of everyone else before he even thinks about himself. That's the kind of person that he is. That's why I would choose him as my pilot.
One detailed review noted that Godfrey's flight path has been revised multiple times, from initial estimates around 33° south to the current 29° south. While he attributes this to data refinements, critics see it as evidence that the method lacks precision. The review also highlighted that his analysis omits consideration of autopilot behavior and human factors, focusing solely on the signal data. Perhaps most damning is that Godfrey's data is proprietary and hasn't been fully shared for independent verification. This makes his work impossible to reproduce, a fundamental requirement of scientific inquiry. Without other researchers being able to analyze the same data and reach the same conclusions, the theory remains unproven, regardless of how compelling it might seem. There have also been accusations of factual errors in Godfrey's presentations. Critics point to instances where he incorrectly identified search vessels or made false claims about Ocean Infinity's activities. On social media platforms, particularly on X, formerly Twitter, debates rage between supporters who see him as a dedicated truth seeker and detractors who call his theories loony and accuse him of distracting from evidence-based investigations. So what are we to make of Richard Godfrey? Is he a visionary who has found a revolutionary way to track aircraft using existing radio infrastructure? Or is he an amateur researcher whose unverified credentials and controversial methods have led Malaysian authorities to waste resources searching in the wrong place? The answer may only come when Ocean Infinity's underwater vehicles scour the seabed at his proposed coordinates. If they find wreckage, Godfrey will be vindicated and his WSPR method will revolutionize aviation tracking. If they find nothing, as they did in 2018, serious questions will need to be asked about how his theories gained such traction and official support. The search continues, and the mysteries deepen. As of October 2025, we find ourselves in a peculiar holding pattern, much like MH370 itself might have been during those mysterious hours over the Indian Ocean. Ocean Infinity's renewed search, which began with such promise in February 2025, has been suspended due to seasonal weather in what mariners call the Roaring Forties, the treacherous latitude band between 40 and 50 degrees south, where the Southern Ocean's unobstructed winds create some of the roughest seas on Earth. The search vessel Armada 7806, equipped with 3 autonomous underwater vehicles, conducted 2 phases of operations. Phase 1, from February 23 to 28, focused on infilling data gaps from previous searches, including the high-priority search area identified in 2020 analyses. Phase 2, from March 11, 28, expanded the search southwest along the 7th arc, covering zones that had never been examined. But as of April 2025, no debris field had been located and the vessel departed for Singapore to fulfill other commitments. The plan is to resume operations in late 2025 or early 2026, when the Southern Ocean's winter storms subside. If they find the wreckage, Ocean Infinity stands to receive $70 million under their no-find, no-fee contract. If they find nothing, they receive nothing. a high-stakes gamble that speaks to either their confidence in the data or their willingness to take calculated risks for the potential payoff and prestige of solving the mystery. But while we wait for the search to resume, we must confront the elephant in the room, the wild theories. And trust me, when it comes to MH370, wild barely begins to cover it.
Well, what really happened to Malaysian Airlines flight MH370? 10 years ago, Malaysian Airlines flight 370 disappeared on radar March 8th, 2014, while flying from Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia to its planned destination in Beijing. Of course, it never arrived. There were 227 passengers on board, 12 crew members at the time. It's hard to believe, to my brain, that 10 years have now passed and we might finally have some pieces of information, some leads as to what caused this disappearance.
The most mainstream controversial theory involves pilot suicide. This theory gained traction after investigators discovered that Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah had practiced a similar southern route in his home flight simulator. The evidence seems damning. Simulator data showing a path to the southern Indian Ocean, personal troubles that emerged in the investigation, and the fact that he had no post-flight plans scheduled. Aviation experts like Simon Hardy have suggested the flight path indicates deliberate, skilled flying, not the actions of incapacitated pilots or a malfunctioning aircraft. Yet this theory has fierce critics, including Zahari's family and colleagues, who describe him as a dedicated professional with no apparent motive. The simulator data, they argue, represents one of hundreds of practice routes, and proving intent from it is like claiming someone is suicidal because they once looked up suicide methods online during a moment of curiosity or concern for others. Then we descend into the realm of the bizarre and the extraordinary. The UFO theories have gained surprising traction in recent years, particularly after videos surfaced online claiming to show MH370's final moments. These videos allegedly show the aircraft surrounded by glowing orbs before vanishing in a flash of light. Proponents, including researcher Ashton Forbes, claim this represents evidence of teleportation or advanced technology intervention. The videos appear to come from two sources, a satellite view and a military drone view, showing the same event from different angles.
Ashton Forbes is a citizen investigative journalist, has in many ways devoted his life to figuring out what happened here. And we decided to invite Ashton on the show to present some of this new evidence, provide some context, and it seems like for a lot of us, maybe this is a story that has just disappeared from our own collective memories. Ashton, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Clayton, for having me. I'm happy to be here today.
Well, thrilled to have you, and it's just hard to believe that it's been 10 years. And I remember it was a Saturday morning for me in the United States.
But experts have thoroughly debunked these videos. Analysis revealed VFX artifacts, fluid dynamics inconsistencies, and manual camera tracking suggestive of digital creation rather than authentic footage. The videos show details that don't match known satellite or drone capabilities, and the movements are inconsistent with real physics. Yet these videos continue to circulate, gathering millions of views and spawning countless YouTube analysis videos that treat them as potentially genuine. Even more outlandish are theories involving black holes, supernatural phenomena, or alien abduction. While these can be dismissed as fringe speculation, they reveal something important about the human need for explanation. When faced with a mystery this profound, some people would rather believe in the impossible than accept that we simply don't know. Government cover-up theories occupy a middle ground between the plausible and the paranoid. Some theorists claim the aircraft was shot down near Diego Garcia, a US military base in the Indian Ocean, and that the subsequent search was deliberately misdirected. They point to eyewitness accounts from Maldives residents who reported seeing a low-flying plane matching MH370's description on the morning of March 8, 2014. But debris patterns and drift analyses contradict a crash location near Diego Garcia, and no credible evidence of a shoot-down has emerged.
What is the official narrative? Again, we still don't know what caused the disappearance, at least officially, right? You could go on Wikipedia, which is an awful website, but the official Wikipedia entry, right, is sets out a certain narrative. Can you just give our audience at a high level where we currently stand with like what the official record of this crash or disappearance is?
Yeah, the official report is actually they don't know what happened to this plane.
Other theories involve corporate espionage related to 20 Freescale semiconductor employees aboard the flight, or connections to Malaysian Airlines Flight 17, which was shot down over Ukraine 4 months later. These theories often rely on coincidences and circumstantial evidence rather than facts, but they persist because, in the absence of truth, speculation fills the void. What's particularly striking is how these theories reflect broader anxieties about technology, government transparency, and our place in the universe. The UFO theories speak to a belief that advanced technology exists beyond our understanding. The government cover-up theories reflect distrust in official narratives. The pilot suicide theory confronts uncomfortable questions about mental health and the trust we place in those responsible for hundreds of lives. But let's return to what we actually know, the concrete facts that any credible theory must account for. We know that over 40 pieces of debris have been recovered from beaches across the Western Indian Ocean. 3 pieces have been positively identified as coming from MH370 through serial numbers, with 18 more deemed highly likely to be from the aircraft. The damage patterns on this debris suggest a violent, high-speed impact, not a controlled ditching. Barnacles found on pieces indicate they were submerged for extended periods, ruling out scenarios where the plane floated intact for days. We know that no human remains have been recovered. All 239 people aboard are presumed dead, though without bodies or the black box, families remain in a tortuous limbo. In 2017, Malaysia officially declared the passengers dead, allowing families to begin settling estates and moving forward legally, even if they couldn't move forward emotionally. We know the black box remains missing. This device, actually 2 boxes, the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder, would answer most of our questions. It would tell us what the pilots said to each other in those final hours. It would show us exactly what the aircraft was doing. But the black box's emergency locator pingers only functioned for about 30 days, and they expired long before anyone was searching in the right location. Now, lying somewhere in the darkness, up to 7 kilometers below the surface, they are nearly impossible to find without stumbling directly upon them. We know that the final Inmarsat ping came at 08:19 Malaysia time, approximately 7 hours after the transponder was disabled, indicating the aircraft flew much longer than initially believed. This final ping suggests fuel exhaustion. The plane simply ran out of gas and began its final descent into the ocean. But where exactly? That's the multi-million-dollar question that continues to elude us. So what happens next? Ocean Infinity will return to the search area, armed with more advanced technology and refined search parameters. They'll focus on expanding the search along the 7th arc, incorporating data from Richard Godfrey's WSPR analysis, drift models from institutions like CSIRO, and insights from other independent researchers. The technology has improved dramatically since the initial searches. The autonomous underwater vehicles can now scan larger areas more efficiently, with better resolution imaging that could identify wreckage that earlier searches might have missed. Independent researchers continue their work as well. Beyond Godfrey's WSPR method, other proposals include using passive radar technology to create a global tracking network that could prevent another disappearance. Dr. Vincent Line has proposed his own crash site at 33.02 degrees S, 100.27 degrees E, in a deep ocean trench he calls the Penang Longitude Deep Hole, arguing this location better fits the debris patterns and satellite data. If the wreckage is found, it will represent one of the greatest triumphs of forensic oceanography and data analysis in history. The black boxes, if recovered intact, would finally reveal the conversations in the cockpit, the technical parameters of the flight, and potentially the cause of the tragedy. Even without functioning black boxes, the wreckage pattern itself would tell a story, whether the aircraft broke up in mid-air or hit the water intact, whether there was fire or explosion, whether the pilots maintained control until the end. But what if Ocean Infinity finds nothing? What if Godfrey's coordinates, like so many proposed locations before them, yield only empty seafloor? This outcome would force difficult questions about the WSPR methodology, about how much weight should be given to independent researchers without peer-reviewed validation, and about whether we're any closer to solving this mystery than we were in 2014.
It feels like a never-ending story. It's a traumatic story for us.
I wonder, with that time, what is the mindset? Is there a point where you give up ever finding out, or do the questions just keep coming?
Yeah, it consumes your thought process on a daily basis.
The families, after more than a decade, exist in a state of suspended grief. Some have found ways to move forward, creating memorials, establishing foundations, advocating for aviation safety reforms. Others remain frozen in March 2014, unable to accept the loss without physical proof. The Chinese families, who lost the most citizens citizens on the flight have been particularly vocal, staging protests and demanding continued searches. They've accused both the Malaysian and Chinese governments of withholding information, of giving up too easily, of valuing cost savings over human life. There are weird, haunting details that continue to emerge even now. Reports of 19 family members claiming they could call the cell phones of victims for up to 4 days after the disappearance, hearing the phones ring rather than going straight to voicemail as they should if powered off or destroyed. Experts dismiss this as a quirk of international calling systems, but the families insist it means something more. Could some passengers have survived initially? Could the plane have come down on land somewhere? These questions, however unlikely, gnaw at those left behind. As we approach the end of 2025 and await Ocean Infinity's return to the search area, we're left with uncomfortable questions that extend beyond the fate of a single aircraft. In an age where we can track individual smartphones anywhere on Earth, where satellite imagery can read license plates from space, where social media records our every movement, how is it possible for something as large as a Boeing 777 to disappear? The cognitive dissonance is staggering. We live in a surveillance society where privacy seems impossible, yet somehow 239 people and a 64-meter-long aircraft evaporated from our monitored world. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.